guys, it's Miss Gifford, and today I'm going to show you how to make a pillow in the shape of a letter. For this project, you're going to need at least 2 sheets of felt, a needle, thread, your pins for sewing, a pair of scissors, either fabric chalk or fabric marker, a straight edge or measuring tape, polyester fiber fill, and also a thimble if you want, and then some embellishments. I'm going to use this felt heart that I made out of scraps and a button. First thing we're going to do is pick what letter we want to use. You can either use one of the templates that I have printed out, or you can print any letter and font that you want to use. You just have to make sure it is a rounded font. So first we are just going to trim very neatly around the perimeter of the letter. Alright, so I have my G very neatly cut out, and then we are going to hold it down with one hand and trace with the other. Take your time with this, go slow, and if you mess up, that's okay because this is chalk and you could just wipe it away. Alright, so as you can see, I have a little mistakes, but that's fine because we're not going to see it. Alright, so here is the first G, and then you are going to do one for the back as well. So once you have both of your letters traced, I'm going to either use my tape measure or my straight edge and just mark about 1/4 inch around and by doing this I'm just going to cut around that so we have a little extra room when we're sewing. And now we are going to put all that other stuff aside, make sure we have a clean workspace, and then we are going to carefully cut about 1/4 inch around from where our line is. Okay, once I have that, I'm going to do the same for the second one. Okay, so here are my 2 G's. They match up. And after that, we are going to do our embellishments. So since we are going to flip this pillow inside out when we sew it, be sure that when you are doing your embellishments, that the sides are opposite. So this is the front and this is also the front because it is going to line up and then we are going to flip it inside out. Okay, so this is my front and I'm going to sew my button. Right here it looks backwards, so one side the letter is going to be backwards and one side the letter is going to be forward. Okay, so sew your button like we learned. You mark where you want it and then you go in from that back side into your first hole you want to use equal pressure and you want to go in diagonals. Okay, so we're going to do that about 3 or 4 times. All right, so after we do that about 3 or 4 times, you know, we go through that side to pull it out, get to the front, and then we wrap it 1, 2, 3 times, and then we go by that stitch and we just pull through, make a loop, and then we double knot. Okay, and now that we feel our button is secure, we can just trim off that excess and move on to the next step. And before you start your embellishments, make sure you use one of your pins. Make sure you're grabbing them out of the basket by the little ball, and you're just going to weave them in and out like we've been doing so you can easily sew around without it moving. If you're like me and you are running low on your thread, you can just tie off where you're at using the double knot that we've been doing. Finish our loop, double knot it. There's one knot, and then we're going to go right back through that loop. Okay, and then you're going to trim it as close as you can. And then for our next needle full of thread, we're going to go right through that same stitch on the back side. So here I have so far. We're going to find that last stitch that we went through, poke it through. We're going to keep our equal pressure, and we're just going to start our blanket stitch again. Okay, and it looks like a continuous line of thread. And for this part and all parts, it's going to be easier if you put the thimble on to help you push everything through. Just like that, you just push it through. Now that I am done with my embellishment, I'm gonna cut off the excess as close as I can. Our next step is to sew. So I have my 2 pieces. These are the 2 fronts. We are going to line them up like that, and then we are going to take our pins, and remember to grab them from the little balls at the end so you don't hurt yourself. And you want to go through both fabrics, in, out, in, out. Make sure you don't bunch it like this because then you won't sew it right. And you want to go all the way around. For some reason, your letters do not match up 100%. Just pin what you can at first, pin what matches up, and then you can trim. I'm probably going to need to trim this little area right here. All right, so my area right here, everything else matches up besides this little area. Make sure you check both sides before you start cutting. Some things could be misaligned. Okay, and then after you cut, you throw all these extra pieces away because you could accidentally sew them. Okay, so put your pin as close to the edge as you can. And then once everything is pinned and your letter looks like your letter, your original, you are going to thread your needle and sew all the way around using a blanket stitch. Be sure all the stitches are even, and be sure to leave a gap about 2 inches anywhere that you want, because that is the space that we are going to stuff using our polyester fiber fill. I am starting right here at this edge. Make sure you pierce through both pieces of fabric, pull all the way to the end, and then I like to start off by going back through that stitch and making a loop and pulling it tight to make a little knot. And then I'm going to keep going like we have been learning. One tip or trick that you could do is to put the needle through about halfway and loop your thread around the top. That already gives you the loop, so you don't have to keep going. Again, you can use any color thread you want. I'm using this navy blue so it's easier for you guys to see. And as I'm nearing this pin, I'm going to just wiggle it out a little bit, and I'm just going to repin it a few inches to the left. Okay, so it's out of my way, and as soon as I get over to this pin, I'm gonna keep moving it over until I reach the next one and I don't need it anymore. This is a great stitch to use your thimble if you like to. Okay, so I'm near the next needle, and I think it's okay and I don't really need it. So I'm just going to put my pin back in the basket and move it off to the side. And when we get to the turning of the corner, just keep doing what you're doing. Remember to move with the fabric. So I'm going to finish my last stitch on this side. And then sometimes it's easy if we maybe fold it down so it's out of the way. And then just keep going. Do even stitches. And even pressure. And just keep going all the way through. Now that I have done almost all the way around using my blanket stitch, I tied it off right here using the double knot method, and now I'm going to trim, put my needles down, put my scissors down, and now we're going to flip it. So let's take out our pins and put them in the basket. And put the basket away, and any of the loose threads that are from before, we can trim them. And now we're going to flip it. So you have to be gentle with this and be patient, especially with letters like G where you have all that. To put my fingers inside and just wiggle it out. Kind of like when you have an inside out sock. So our next step is to fill. So you're going to take your polyester fiber fill, and little by little, this is a process, you are going to stuff it in, use your fingers, and you want to make sure everything is evenly stuffed so it's all feels the same. Our first little section stuffed, and we want to make sure everything is equal to this. Carefully take one of your pins and you're going to pin it away from you because we're still stuffing and we don't want to stab our fingers. Okay, so there I have one pin in right there, and I'm going to keep stuffing this area. Okay, so now that I have everything pinned up and ready to go, I'm going to close this with the running stitch. You could also use the back stitch or overcast, but I've already done the blanket stitch twice, and for this project we need to use at least 2 different stitches. So I'm starting inside the 2 stitches, and I'm going to cut off that excess with my scissor and then put those to the side. So I put it through, and then through that same stitch we go right through, and as you know, the running stitch is tiny and neat, so if you want to make little dashes to keep everything in line, that would be a good idea. Alright, and after we do the running stitch, I'm going to go back over it with the overcast stitch, just so it looks a little bit more similar to the back stitch that we have around the rest. So that overcast stitch, we just go up and over, up and over. Same thing, we're using small stitches all the way around. Okay, and I close that again with the overcast stitch on top of the running. And here we have it. Here is our G for Miss G. Got my 2 embellishments, my 2 different colors.